Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harping on Rugby. This is the final pod from our sixth season, which I have to say has been a monster going all the way back to mid-September. This is actually our 47th Sunday recording since then, would you believe? I reckon I deserve, or at least need, a break. But that doesn't mean I'll be switching off from rugby altogether. There is still, of course, the Women's Rugby World Cup starting in a couple of weeks, and I'm really looking forward to following Ireland's progress. Obviously, it's great to see them back in the tournament again, but also there's a lot of excitement around this squad at the moment. Anyway, when it comes to producing online content, however, like I say, I'll need to recharge the old battery, so I'll be following the action as a fan, and I'll definitely be tuning into the great Mudder Rucker podcast for all the interviews and analysis I need over the coming weeks. As luck would have it, one of the Mudder Ruckers dynamic duo has joined me to help set us up for what's to come. She's back for her seventh Harping appearance. Welcome back to Ailbhe O'Nolan.
7? Is it that many?
That's it. Yeah, you're a seasoned campaigner at this stage. Yeah,
My God.
Yeah. And of course, a shout out, of course, to your fellow Mudder Rucker, Keenan Muller. Pretty sure my listeners are familiar with his work. He was only just with us a couple of weeks ago reviewing the Seconds Lions men's test. But anyway, Ailbhe, before we get to the actual rugby itself, we last had you on back in February, just as you were launching the old pod ahead of the Six Nations. How have things been going for you?
It's been a whirlwind, to be honest. 11 episodes down, and yeah, I think, I kind of cut my chops a little bit being a guest for you and I suppose getting comfortable with talking on a podcast. But I'm sure, as you know, hosting is a completely different vibe and completely different responsibility. So it's been a steep learning curve, but I think, given what we've done in such a short space of time, I think it's been phenomenal. Like to go through some of the guests that we've had. We've had Chloe Pierce is part of the furniture at this point, and she's incredible. She's like a rugby encyclopedia. We've had Ilse van Staden, we've had Katie O'Dwyer, we've had Fiona Hayes, Niamh Byrne. These are all ex-Irish internationals. More recently, we've had Munster captain Maeve O'Leary and the Leinster captain Molly Boyne. We've had USA international. I think she was Eagle 237, if I'm correct, Alicia Washington, on one of our bonus episodes. And then we actually got to talk to some of the players in camp as well. So we spoke to the Setters, Eve Higgins and Aoife Dalton, and we spoke to Niamh O'Dowd, aka Noddy, and the most entertaining of all, Jane Clohessy, who was just an absolute thrill. So, we've done a huge amount in this short space of time, spoken to so many voices from across the game, past and present. So it's been a whirlwind.
Yeah, and you haven't even just been, like you said, you set up just before the Six Nations, but you weren't just talking about that. I mean, all those guests, they had some amazing stories. I mean, you said you've got 11 episodes there. It's a back catalog. It's well worth going back through them because they've all got some great stories to share.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we got a huge variety of guests and we got a huge variety of content from them. Like I said, Jay Clohessy, an absolute riot. That episode is by far my favorite of the lot. But then you get some really kind of in-depth thinkers who, to them, the game of rugby is a game of chess. It's so strategic, and you kind of get some insight from them. Fiona Hayes is absolutely one of those people. She was on our AIL bonus episode. Like I said, Chloe Pierce just goes in depth. Ilse van Staden, I think, is one of the most interesting characters I've ever had a chance to talk to. The wisdom that flows out of that woman is just incredible. So it's been just, talking to a huge variety of people about, again, a huge variety of topics, including trans inclusion in sport was one of our bonus episodes, which is, kind of a hot topic and one you want to take on with, a lot of care, but, we're very passionate about, their inclusion. So we did a whole episode covering the Rugby game, which took part, was part of the Union Cup. And that was actually run by one of the ex-English internationals. And they created this wonderful event where cis players and trans players alike played a game, and it was phenomenal and really, really heartwarming, really inclusive. So we kind of covered a bit of that, and yeah, it's fabulous. Huge variety, and it's great. And we're hoping for, we're covering the World Cup now. So we're hoping to get a bit of variety there. And then I have my eye on a guest after the World Cup for what I hope would be a very, very exciting episode, for me at least. So there's a wonderful woman who played for Munster, played for Ireland, but also played soccer for Ireland. Jackie McCarthy O'Brien is her name. Phenomenal story of her life pre-sport and in sport. And she's got a book coming out towards the end of the year, pre-Christmas. So we're hoping to have a chat with her about that, hopefully. And, something, again, incredible topics to discuss.
Excellent. And of course, you'll find all the relevant links to the pod and your new YouTube channel as well in our program notes. Please be sure to go back over those episodes and comment, like, share, and subscribe. Engage as much as you can with all that. But listen, for now, we're going to turn our attention, obviously, to that 2025 Rugby World Cup. It's taking place over in England. Now, to prepare, Scott Beeman's side have just played a couple of warm-up matches. Last weekend, they recorded a 27-21 victory over Scotland in Cork. And just on Saturday, they went down 26-47 to Canada in Belfast. Was it a good exercise overall for the squad?
I think in some ways it was, and in some ways it wasn't. I think, at the end of the Six Nations, we saw a whole load of injuries to very key positions. So we saw the likes of Erin King and Dorothy Wall. Their season was ended. Their calendar year was ended. I don't expect to see them back before the end of the year, possibly, but certainly no Rugby World Cup for the two of them, which is a huge disappointment. Incredible players. Erin King, who is a player who's played a lot of sevens rugby, who I actually knew as a kid when I coached her. She's a fabulous, fabulous athlete. And unfortunately, she got a big knee injury, and Dorothy Wall ruptured a cruciate. Dorothy Wall is a Munster player who moved over to Exeter Chiefs and has thrived over there. And she's really, really tough carrier. So, losing two players from back row / second row has been quite tough. So the Scotland game saw, some new caps and trying to, I suppose, belatedly get a little bit of depth into the squad. There's definitely still some experimentation going on, and it's late in the day for that, but it's forced through injury. But in saying that, they did very well against Scotland. A very, very slow start to the game where we conceded 2 tries, looked to be very much at the back foot. But by half time, we were within 2 points of them, and then came out in the second half and really, really built into the game. Thankfully, came away with a win. I think thanks in part to a lot of good game management, but very much thanks to a very experienced bench that came on and really did a good job. Niamh O'Dowd, very much a huge job. She's one of our greatest defensive players. To see a prop setting the line speed is not exactly typical, but that's exactly what she does. She was up in their faces, and shut down a lot of the Scotland attack and really performed. And then the Canadian game, like you said, we lost. It was that kind of stereotypical game of two halves. We came out and we looked to be tired, rusty, making a lot of the handling errors we've seen them make in the past, struggling to exit, a lot of kind of basic errors. And at halftime, I was, some of me was kind of wishing, if this game could just end, that'd be fine. Don't want to get any major injuries coming into the World Cup. But then the Irish side that came out after halftime, you'd swear there was a completely different 1-15. It was incredible. Something was said to them in the dressing room. Some strategy was changed. Something happened at halftime and a different side. And we saw Ireland with a lot more ball. We saw Canada with a lot less. Canada on the back foot at times. Ireland building into the game. Some errors at times. Some calls at times by the referee were probably a little bit unfair, particularly when we saw, the 9, Aileen Riley, just constantly targeted, as she's entering the ruck before she's even got the ball, and they were on top of her, which was a pity. I think we probably could have narrowed the gap by a little bit more because of that. But listen, it was a really good challenge for them. Again, we didn't get any major injuries that I know of. And it was, to be the best, you have to beat the best. That old cliche, but it's very true. Canada are second in the world. It's not like the men's game at all. Canada are incredible. Despite the fact that they're having to self-fund to fly over, they are a wonderful team of incredible athletes. A lot of them play in the sevens. A lot of them are Olympians, very fit, but also very physical and big girls at the same time. So yeah, huge challenge, but one we really, really needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for for anyone that may not know the women's game that well, just to appreciate that about the Canadians. That like you say, I think it was that win even put them up into second, but they're one of the top four, and there's a distinct there's sort of a group of four. I think it's England, Canada, New Zealand, France are kind of the top four, and Ireland have risen up the rankings over the year. We're kind of best of the rest at the moment. We're in fifth, but there's still that gap to the top four. So to get that performance, especially in the second half, there was a profound difference in physicality. You could see it's not like we weren't going for our tackles, but they were kind of running over us at points. It was just difficult to get into the game, and we just one break through from the first up tackler, and they were gone for a try. But like you say, they rallied in the second half. They showed that we could score, and that's crucial. And it really showed what you could do. And it's important to get across people. Don't look at that scoreline. Look at the 26, not so much the 47. And Ireland is able to score against those top teams, and it's good to know going ahead to the World Cup.
Absolutely. So few sides will ship 27 points against Canada. That's virtually unheard of, and for us to have done that is huge. You look at the game and the very critical eye, particularly looking at a women's game, might be like, oh, they're falling off tackles. But if you look at the Canadian side, not one of them has skipped leg day. They don't have a day that's not leg day. And it's like tackling tree trunks. They are just so powerful that, falling off a tackle isn't just falling off a tackle. It's being run over by these players. But we scored 27 points against them. We showed what we could do with new caps, with fresh people in the team. That's that's not saying that we're poor. That's saying that we have so much more potential. And like that, we're the best of the rest, and we're going to be pushing in the next year into that best kind of tier.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's definitely an upward curve with the team. It's just it's where this World Cup falls. We'll see where they are right now, but even beyond it, I mean, you can look beyond it. And there's a path for the next World Cup and we're going to talk a bit later about the interprovincials. There's another crop of players coming through as well, so it's definitely a net positive, I think, for Ireland. But let's now look ahead at what lies ahead for Ireland in that World Cup itself. We find ourselves in Pool C along with Japan, who we play first. Then it's Spain the following weekend. Those games are at Franklin's Gardens in Northampton, and then finally it's down to Brighton, where we must face the reigning champion Black Ferns. Definitely not an easy task, but still plenty of scope for confidence when it comes to at least getting out of the pool. I mean, do you think this is a good sequence of matches for the squad?
I think it is, and I think people looking at the pool will be saying, "Oh, Japan and Spain, okay, really, really focus on the Black Ferns," but Japan are a very, very good side. The last time we played them, it was 2023. Ireland were on tour in Japan, won one, lost one. And Japan, I think the women's team plays probably not too dissimilarly to the men's. You don't know what you're getting. You don't know what kind of strategy they're going to play. They thrive in chaos. We thrive in structure. They're very, very fit, very determined team. It's not going to be an easy task by any means. Looking at Spain as well. So more recently, Japan played Spain last month, and Japan won by, I suppose a decent enough margin. But Spain again aren't. Oh, Spain play rugby. Spain are a very, very quality side in the women's game. If you look back to the Six Nations when it first began for the women, there was no Italy. There was Spain, and Spain were a quality side. And it was only to align with the men's game that Spain got booted and Italy got brought in. And it's a real pity for the development of Spanish rugby that happened. But they are a very quality side. And again, the Sevens, they are very, very much a quality side. You look at players like Claudia Pena, just incredible athletes. So again, it's probably, looking at it, it's probably the easiest of the games, but not by any means easy. The Black Ferns, it's a funny one. We've beaten them twice in our history. We beat them back in the 2014 World Cup, and we beat them more recently in the WXV last year. The WXV game last year was very much a shock. We did not expect that to happen, particularly because, as we discussed, 2 years ago when I was on, Ireland were at a very, very low ebb. We looked like we were kind of coming up from that. But, you're kind of afraid to really believe it until we saw them beat the Black Ferns. And it took a lot of grit, a lot of determination. But I suppose the realist in me says it also took the Black Ferns taking us for granted. It took them not having a clue who Aoife Wafer was, and then the next day they all knew who Aoife Wafer was, And it took, a bit of complacency on their part, I think. But they're not going to be complacent when we face them in the World Cup. It's going to be absolutely huge. Everybody and their granny I know is going to Brighton, including myself. It's going to be, I think it's going to be almost like a home game, to be honest, or as close to a home game as you can get with a World Cup in England. There's going to be a lot of Irish fans over there, and you really, really hope that that is going to just lift the team that little bit more. And hopefully we'll have Aoife Wafer back in time for that. She's got a knee injury at the moment. She had surgery on it, but she seems to be tracking really, really well with her recovery. I don't think there's anything she can't do really well, to be honest. So, no shock there. So yeah, hopefully we'll get Wafer back in time for that and can have a good go with them at least.
Like you say, a lot of people who don't know will probably look at Japan and Spain and say that, oh yeah, they're the easy games. But I mean, in a way, like with the way the pool is, it's the first two teams that get out of it. So you want to do well against the Black Ferns, but you're thinking, well, at least we want to win those first two matches. That kind of makes them sort of cup finals because they're up first, and you want to make sure you want to get those wins in the back. So there's a little bit of extra pressure on them. But I mean, it is good in a way, but you do have to look at it through that kind of lens. And you mentioned Aoife Wafer, like she's back from an injury. The squad has already been hit by injuries to absolute key players, Dorothy Wall, Erin King. They would have definitely been in the matchday squad for those matches. They make a lot of countries test teams, but you have to make up for that. You have to make up for them. So if they're going to be without Wafer for those opening two games, what are the key players they'll be looking for in the squad for those first couple of matches?
I think certainly Brittany Hogan is immense. She's somebody who doesn't get a lot of mentions because she's one of those back row players that, for the most part, goes about her game quietly, doing the hard work, building a platform for others to kind of shine from. She's, I'd say her ruck involvement is huge. I haven't seen the stats, but she's just that type of player that works very, very hard, and probably deserves more plaudits than she gets. Looking at Grace Moore as well. Grace Moore, certainly in the last game against Canada, she came out a woman possessed, in the second half. Some huge carries, certainly carried twice or three times before two of the tries to, again, put the defence or put the Canadian defence on the back foot and build for the backs to score those tries out wide. She's a very, very good player. Previous to the injuries, she was very much second string. She was on the bench. She wasn't getting a lot of game time. And now we're seeing her get game time and she's thriving in it. There's a little bit of doubt about Tricky, Adele McMahon, who's co-captain. So she picked up slight knee injury. They're confident that she will make it. But, I think it's a bit touch and go. She's the type of person that glue her back together and get her on the pitch because it's more her voice does as much as she does with her body. She is, a real leader. She's got that experience. I think she would ground a lot of the young players in the side through her experience. But yeah, there's certainly those players to look at. For me though, Big Sam Monaghan came back for these World Cup warm games. It's almost like it was scripted, this perfect return from major injury, 13 months out.
13 months, yeah, that's a long time away.
13 months out, yeah. And, from what I heard, dark days in that return or in that rehab, and unsure if she'd make it back. Well, she's made it back and she's still the offload queen she ever was. She's, a very tall, I think she's about 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", tall player, big frame, big carry, and yeah, again, the other co-captain, a real leader, and that experience we absolutely need on the pitch. Um, One player for me that is, an incredible player, and we had her on the podcast herself, would be Aoife Dalton. She is a phenomenal player. She is defensively incredible. She says herself, "I'm not running 60 meters and scoring tries." No, no, no. We'll leave that to somebody else. That's a Bathing Parson or somebody. But Aoife Dalton's defensive work and her defensive read is incredible. Her comms is phenomenal, and I think she's maybe 5'4". She's not a big stature, 5'3", 5'4", but she plays like an absolute animal. And she's another person who's never skipped leg day, so that does make sense. Other players to look out for would be Bathing Parsons, who again has returned from injury. We've had a number return from injury just in time for the World Cup, thankfully. Parsons is incredible. Any game you're at, as soon as she touches the ball, the crowd just goes up a notch. She's so electric. She's got just step people, 16 times in the space of half a second, and she's gone. Incredibly powerful. You do not want to be on the end of one of her handoffs because she will obliterate you. She's incredibly powerful. So yeah, we've got quite a lot of kind of big hitters in there, really, really good quality players. So hopefully we'll still have that depth to get to the quarterfinals and maybe even beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, we mentioned the Dorothy Wall, Erin King, and Eva Wafer. But the great thing about this squad is that there's so many players in so many different positions that have stood out. I mean, you could also name as and you mentioned the way Erin King was involved with the sevens. And the key thing about this squad is that they've reintegrated the sevens into the squad. They brought back all the best players. You'll get the likes of Stacey Flood, who in this game, incredible assist passes, missed passes in both directions. For 2 tries. It was just phenomenal finishes.
She's incredible.
Yeah, that's it's amazing. And a lot of people would say, well, she'd obviously be your number 10, but you don't, because Dan O'Brien is such an amazing boost. And she's she some amazing exit clearances I noticed in both games, and running the game well, and taking conversions as well, and it's good from the touchline. It's there's just all round from 1 to 15. There's also multiple options as well in all those positions. So it's really good.
Another player who deserves a strong mention is Linda Dugang.
Oh yes,
the amount of minutes she clocks as a player is incredible. And I would love to get inside that woman's head, because she just goes about her job with a ferocity but a calmness at the same time. And I do not understand it. She's a bit of a contradiction in that respect. She's phenomenal. She does so much work around the park, so many carries, so many tackles. She's, her stats are always up there consistently, and she's one player that I really fear losing, and I think I fear there'll be a bit of an over reliance on her. We do have some quality props coming through, but Christy Haney, who would be usually kind of second fiddle to Dugang, has a slight knee knock. I don't know if she's going to make the squad or not with that knee knock. So yeah, it's one of those positions that I think we're at an absolute luxury to have Dugang, but we would be absolutely deprived without her. So it's one of those positions I kind of fear for.
Absolutely. And of course, you talk about tactics and creating space and all that kind of stuff, and there's ways and means of doing it. But when they're 5 meters from the line, there's tactic, just give it to Linda. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like it's very simple. She's great. She's direct. She gets involved in every ruck, whether she has the ball or not, and it's amazing to watch. So, like I say, multiple options in all the positions. Well, listen, let's move on maybe and have a quick look and maybe a broader view of the tournament overall. I mean, I spoke earlier about that big four: England, New Zealand, Canada, and France. I mean, I'm assuming that they'll kind of be the favorites for the title, with, of course, the Red Roses looking to make the most of home advantage. How do you actually see it going?
I can't see England not winning. It's very difficult to see that But in the last World Cup, I would have said the same thing. So, and they didn't
They
win
all
it.
were.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and but I think where England are now, they've moved on even from that.
Yeah.
And they are such a quality side. The depth that they have is unbelievable. They are, incredible athletes. They have easily some of the best players in the world. We hear talk about it. There should be a women's Lions on the cards, but it's like, okay, well, what English player do you take
Yeah.
out?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
default is going to be England. So it's, for me, Aoife Wafer in there
Yeah. I was about
any
to say
day of
Aoife
the week.
Wafer and 14 English. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. It's you might get one Scottish player in there.
Mm,
Welsh, I don't know. It's very hard to kind of pull any of the English players out because they are just so good.
mm,
But the thing is that the Black Ferns just have a way of winning. And I think the Black Ferns probably struggle in the same ways that we've struggled over the last few years. That there's a bit of underinvestment there. There's a bit of, what is their domestic competition doing? Okay, it's now doing some real stuff, but it was a bit of a struggle to get it to that point. But are they going to pull out a big performance? Are they not? It's very, very hard to tell. I'd be shocked if they didn't, but is it going to be a big enough performance to beat the English? And I think the only way they could do that is the Black Ferns play like the All Blacks. They like to play loose rugby. They like to be creative. They like to move the ball from the point of contact, keep the ball alive, kind of stuff. Whereas the English love structure. They have a very, very solid, structured game. We talked on the podcast on Mudder Rucker about how when they have their structure, it's clear that they know, okay, from this point in the pitch, when we're here, when they're there, when we're doing this and they're doing that, this is what we do. And it's very much no, I wouldn't say scripted, but it's
mm.
very, very planned. They know what to do in every scenario. Their rugby IQ is through the roof. But if they get unstructured, and if the All Blacks unstructure them at any point, they could have the beating of them. I would have thought, looking at France, given the way they performed in the final of the Six Nations, they came within 2 points of beating England, and that would have been unheard of. England have won 7 Six Nations in a row. So seeing them get within 2 points, I thought, oh, this could be, they might have been just perfectly cooked coming into the World Cup, but they only just played them this weekend, and England absolutely ran over France. They put 40 points on them, I think.
Mm.
So I would have loved to have seen France do something. You never know. Maybe they were just taking it off the boil a little bit, lull them into a false sense of security, and they hope to run over them later. But I've yet to be convinced. I think the stereotype of French teams, men or women, is who knows what France team you're going to get on the day. Who knows? What kind of rugby are they going to play? Is it going to be the jouet rugby? Is it going to be this, or is it going to fall apart? Who knows? So I think there's a lot of unpredictability from the other teams. England are going to be predictably themselves. Are the other teams going to come up against them and give them a run for their money?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't put my money on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you say, there's plenty of motivation for England. You had the disappointment 4 years ago. Obviously, this is their home tournament. They might feel maybe the Lionesses have been getting too much of the headlines the past while as well. So
you never know.
They want to get more than that,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But listen, it is looking like them. But like you say, the thing about playing a great team in any sport is that whatever the team sport is, there is a mistake. They do make a mistake. Something does go wrong.
Yeah,
it's just that when that happens, what do you do? And a lot of teams are like, they're so afraid of the team that they don't. But teams like New Zealand and, like you say, France, on their day when they can do it, they're really good at taking those advantages. So it's not a done deal, like you say. You wouldn't absolutely bet on it. So yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting tournament from start to finish. Okay, well, listen, before we wrap things up, we should probably take a quick look at the women's Interpros that kicked off on Sunday. It's They always take place this time of year anyway. At the it's obviously they're clashing. It's clashing with the World Cup, but it's kind of the way
Mm.
the season works out. Leinster defeated Ulster 37-21 in the opener today in Donnybrook with debutants Kathy Baker and Emma Brogan starring. Brogan scored a hat trick. Baker added 2 tries. Jane Neal impressed. Ulster responded through Sheeran, Daly, and Barrett, but it was Leinster's attacking that proved decisive. In the second match of the day, Leinster defeated Connacht 44-5. So day one looked, to all intents and purposes, like we could have yet another Leinster-Munster decider in a few weeks, but we'll see. Obviously, with the World Cup and all this year's Interpros are mostly about the talent looking to break into the test setup. But I'll tell you, I watched some of that Leinster-Ulster match today, and there was a lot of quality on display from both sides throughout. There were some stunning tries.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because, like you said, it's at World Cup time. All of that talent is in camp, whether they're going to be in the squad or they're kind of on the fringes of it. So these squads have been left to cast the net wide and really get in a lot of the young talent. I know Leinster started with a squad of 65 players from across the province. I think Connacht started with 56. So, really looking to kind of find the new young talent. A lot of the under-20s who were playing during the summer were drafted into their provinces and did very well. You mentioned Jane Neal, who was absolutely incredible as a young player. The one to watch for me. She is absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, a very, very young sides. What I thought we'd see from those 2 matches would be a lot of errors, a lot of messy rugby, a lot of scrums, a lot of people learning. But no, there was a lot of slick rugby out there. There was a lot of real talent on show. Myself and Cian actually got to spend a little bit of time with the Leinster and the Munster squads in the last few weeks, and we felt so old. So old. Some, really, really young players, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. But it's not the rugby of old where your 18, 19, 20-year-old was finding a rugby ball for the first time. That's certainly what it was when I started to play. A lot of the Irish teams, even in the last 5 years, would have been similar to that, would have taken up rugby quite late in life, would have converted from Gaelic football or what have you. But we're not seeing that anymore. We're seeing players coming in, having started at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of rugby. And, having a player who had 10 years of rugby IQ in them was, okay, so when are you retiring? And now it's, oh, you've 10 years and now you're getting your first cap. Okay. It's a very, very different, I suppose, pathway to what it was. And we're just seeing, in those 2 games, we saw a lot of that coming through. Definitely some real talent. Like you said, Jane Neal was a standout. Kathy Baker, who's one of the Irish Sevens players and an Olympian, who is an incredible athlete who works incredibly, incredibly hard, really stood out in the centre. She's playing 13. And, I think sometimes when a Sevens player comes into the 15s game after having spent so long in the Sevens, even if they found their foundation in the 15s game, they can struggle a little with the lack of space and they don't really do anything. Kathy Baker made her own space. She was good. She was fine. And yeah, we saw a very, very good side. The standouts from Ulster for me were very much Sheeran. Siobhan Sheeran. She made her debut today, and my God, her ability to fight in contact. She's not a player who finds space, but she makes it. She
Yeah.
just that leg pump through contact was absolutely phenomenal. So, there's some real talent there as well. And then, looking at Munster put a serious score on Connacht. And it's not to say that Connacht didn't show up or weren't any good. They're a very young side, but they are a side of talented players, but they were just out-muscled on the day. And I think because they're out-muscled, they kind of fell off towards the end of the game, understandably very tired. Munster had still probably, I'd say out of all of the provinces, they have the most experience still with them. They have the likes of our favourite Chloe Pierce. They have the likes of Barrett. They have, some really, really good quality, experienced players. Kate Flannery, very, very good 10. Wasn't even starting. She came off the bench. Katrina Finn started at 10. who is, I was chatting to, when I was down at their training session, I was chatting to one of the dads on the sideline, and he did, the typical Cork thing and went, oh yeah, that's the female Raj. And sure enough, she's very, very good. She's a 10 who has a lot of time on the ball. She takes the ball, hammers on the brakes, has that time and the awareness to know exactly where everybody is, put somebody through space, and it looks like it's nothing to her. So a real talent. Very, very young player. Again, one of the under-20s that's coming into the provincial setup. So huge talent there. So yeah, I think it's an interesting year for the Interpros. I think that it's at risk of being forgotten a little bit because of the World Cup, but it's so good. It's the breeding ground of young talent. It's where you finally get to see them really on TV. TG Cahard ran it on their YouTube page, and it was great to see. Really, really good quality feed. And yeah, you got kind of to see the new and future players coming through that will be wearing green. So I think I like in the Six Nations when you see the men's under-20s and you could kind of pick out, oh, I think I'll see him someday. And oh, yeah. I remember seeing Johnny Sexton playing in the under-20s and kind of going, oh, yeah, I suppose he's all right. And you kind of see that, I think, in the Interpros for the women. You get to see that young talent, particularly this year, because there's so much youth in the squad.
And there's now an Irish under-20s women's team as well that's playing regular matches.
Exactly,
that's a big help for that, yeah.
It is, absolutely. So I think it's an interesting thing to spend a bit of time on a Sunday having a look at their games. You won't regret it. It's fun, it's competitive, it's ferocious, and you're getting to see some of those, fabulous, athletic young players coming through. So give it a watch if you can.
Absolutely. Now, you said at one point there that you felt old looking at some of the players coming through. I've only got 4 words for you: cry me a river, because it's 5-6 years ago when I went to a Leinster game. There's a guy making his debut, and I realized I went to school with his dad. So there you go. I win that game. No, there you go. No, seriously, no, it's great. No, the Interpros are great. Like you say, all those matches are being covered on the TG Car Sport channel on YouTube. Sundays are available to watch back, so do check them out if you haven't seen them. And the rest of the tournament will be screened live as well. That's on the next few Sundays, or the next few weekends as well. But also go to the matches if you can as well. Energy Park or all around the country. They're on, so try to get down to me if you can. Listen, Ailbhe, we're going to leave it there. Many thanks for that. Always great to have you on. Best of luck for the pod, and of course to all involved in the Irish team over the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And so that finally brings our 6th season to a close. Many thanks to you all for tuning in. And of course, to all the contributors who have helped me with the Harpin. In no particular order, there's been Keena Miller, Neil Keegan, David Cordial, Hugo Gordon, Jay Long, Kieran Duffy, Connor Cronin, Rich Mifsud, Mark Jackson, and Tom Coleman. I literally couldn't be doing this without them donating their voices and time week in, week out. And I look forward to having them back again next season. Like I say, we'll be taking some time off from the podcast, but we will be keeping up the weekly 80 plus columns on Wednesday. So keep an eye on our Substack account for that. But apart from that, I'll see you all again in September. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.